Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from Bangkok. This is day 2 of the KU Online Academic Forum in celebration of the 79th anniversary of Kasetsart University. The forum is entitled Reinventing Kasetsart University, focusing on innovative research and advanced studies in agriculture and food. First, I want to announce, well, thank you for joining us. And then I want to announce that our session from yesterday has been uploaded on YouTube. And the group here, I think, has sent or can send a QR or a link to that. But also you can just if you did a research or did a Google search or a duck search or whatever on the forum, you can also find it. So it'll be available just by doing a normal search on YouTube. We will try to do the same thing for today's session, but we have not had that organized yet. So we will announce and let you know if we're going to put a YouTube out there for tonight's session or not. Okay, let me do a quick. I'm Professor Matthew Downs. I work here at Kasetsart University. I've done so for more than 8 years. I'm originally a law professor, a retired law teacher from California. But I'm very happy being here in Thailand. In fact, I think the United States is a little wacko right now. We are starting second day, 3 February 2022. Let me give you a quick overview of our program this evening. We're going to start with 2 panel sessions. The first will start here in a couple moments. And these sessions are intended to showcase the outputs from our 2 schemes that are involved in Kasetsart University's innovative research and advanced studies programs. The research is intentionally focusing on agriculture and food and agriculture and forestry, but it includes all the different related sciences and technologies. The idea is very futuristic and innovative and creative, focusing on the future vision of research and dealing with food security and food-related issues. It's kind of I think a 4-year program. Our first panel is focusing on Scheme 1. Scheme 1 is looking at our outputs that have come about because of exchange due to advanced research focus with collaboration and research and co-publication in high-quality international journals. Our moderator, or the chairperson tonight, is Assistant Professor Kittipong Ratanapan. He is also the Associate Dean for Research at the Faculty of Agro-Industry here at Kasetsart University. So he will do introductions of the panelists, and I'm going to be quiet now.
Thank you, Professor Matt, for your introduction, and good evening, everyone. Our invited professors, all participants, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to be here this evening to be a chairman of the first session today. And the first session today, we have four panelists with us, and they will talk about mostly for the outbound exchange for advanced research program, a collaborative project, and co-publication in high quality international journals. And today, for the format of the first scheme, today we have a short presentation from each invited professors, and following by the Q&A. And after we finish all 4 panelists today, we will have wrap-up questions and comments from all professors. If we are ready to meet them. I'm very pleased to welcome all of professors of the first section. We would begin with the first professors today, Professor Masaki Morikawa from Faculty of Environmental Earth Science from Hokkaido University, Japan. I will give you all a brief introduction of Professor Masaki. Professor Dr. Masaki Morikawa, he is a professor of environmental molecular biology from Faculty of Environmental Earth Science from Hokkaido University. His studies are mainly in the field of environmental microbiology, including thermophiles, cyclophiles, and hydrocarbon degrading bacteria. He's also examined the structure function relationships of enzymes and surfactant molecules. His research interest mainly is in beneficial plant microbes interactions, and from his successful work on his research, he received a lot of many awards of paper award from many journals, such as Journal of Bioscience and Bioengineering, Takeda Techno Entrepreneurship Award, Fermentation and Metabolism Research Award, including JSBBA Innovative Research Program Award. He is also the first place winner of Knowing to Duckweed Growing Application Award in 2017. And his research publication metrics by Web of Science last year are 140 papers with over 4,000 citations. And his H index right now is really high of 33. And he also served as a vice president of Japan Society for Environmental Biotechnology and Research, representative of SATREP projects to 2021 by JST and JICA. And today we are with us now, and he would give a talk on the topic of innovative research and advanced study in agriculture or food. If you are ready, please welcome Professor Masaki for his presentation this evening.
Thank you very much for a nice introduction. So this is Masaki Morikawa from Hokkaido University. So as you know, the Sapporo in Japan is a very north side. So now the temperature highest is below the 2 degrees, minus 2 degrees, and the lowest temperature is minus 10. So the whole ground is under the snow. So you can imagine how large the world is. So today I'd like to introduce ongoing joint project on the duckweed. So we have just started a joint project between Kasetsart University and Hokkaido University on the topics of the duckweed. It's a very small, tiny floating plant, but has a very high potential to realize the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. So now the Thailand government started the biocircular green economy, which is pretty much fit to our project. So this project is supported by the SATREPS. This means Science and Technology Research Partnership for Sustainable Development, which is organized by the Japan Science and Technology Agency and also the Japan International Cooperation Agency until the 2026. Okay, so what is the duckweed? So why we chose the duckweed? So duckweed, as I assume that you will see many places, including the Kasetsart campus, university campus. So the non-edible groups, duckweed, is naturally growing in ponds. So the name is from the duck-eating weeds. But in Thailand, you are producing the edible group duckweed, which is called a kainam. So now the kainam is produced a little bit far from Bangkok area, and the price is very cheap. So our hope is to increase these values and also contribute to the sustainable society. So this is the duckweed. So duckweed composed of the 5 genera and 38 species. So the most smallest one is Wolfia globosa. And this is a kainam, and this is very nice, very tasty. But the giant duckweed is like this, and there are 5 genera here. So anyway, these plants are very small and floating on the water. And this is known as the smallest plant, flowering plants. So this is a flower of the duckweed. So we cannot differentiate between the female and male flowers, but indeed flowering. But interestingly, the duckweed is categorized into the Araceae. So this is one of the world's biggest flowering plant. The tallest is about 3 meters. So we surprised how diverse in the plant field. So anyway, the plant is one of the renewable energy resources, as you know. So the biomass, the trees and plants can grow using the sunlight energy and also fixed carbon dioxide, which is emitted from the waste gas. And the biomass can be reused as a biofuels and many resources. But the wood, most of the wood contains a very hard recalcitrant materials, which is called the lignins and cellulose. So this is very difficult to break down. So it's a little bit difficult to convert to the biofuels or the bioplastics. But the reason why the tree needs such a hard compound is that they need to grow against the, stand against the gravity. But the duckweed doesn't stand straight against the gravity. So they are laying on the surface of the water. So that's why they don't need so hard materials. And they contain less cellulose, but rich in starch. So this is very nice benefit of the duckweed. And the duckweed can grow in the polluted water. So the wastewater can be a costless fertilizer, and the duckweed can grow even 5% high concentration of the carbon dioxide, so which completely fits to the sustainable society. So this shows a brief introduction of the wastewater treatment systems. So most of the wastewater treatment systems are activated sludge system, which is composed of the various kinds of the microbes. So the organic nitrogen and the phosphorus and the carbons are break down by the bacteria using the oxygen. So the water purification generally needs high energy, electric energies. So in order to reduce these energy, so our idea is to introduce the plant in the polluted water, because duckweed and plants can need the nitrogen and phosphorus as a nutrient, and carbon dioxide can be a carbon source. So according to the growth of the duckweed, the water is purified. And also the product duckweed can be used as a very nice biomass resources. So this is our basic concept. And what is a plant growth promoting bacteria? Because I'm a microbiologist, so our motivation is to help the growth of the duckweed in the symbiotic microorganisms. So we found the first plant growth promoting bacteria for duckweed, so which can improve the growth rate up to twofold. So this is the growth of the sterile duckweed. And upon the inoculation of the specific plant growth promoting bacteria, the growth rate increased to the double. So this phenomena was confirmed in the laboratory. So our challenge is this system can be functioned in the environmental water systems. So first, I'd like to show the videos, how fast the duckweed is growing. So the upper panel shows the Lemna minor. It's a standard duckweed with no bacteria association. But the latter lower panel shows the duckweed with the PGPB. So that we first grow from 6 leaves, and after a couple of days, the growth is dramatically changing. As you see, the upper panel shows the normal growth, but the lower panel shows a significant higher growth. After the 1 week, the upper panel shows the 25 leaves, but the lower panel shows the 95. So the growth promotion effect is almost a fourfold. But this is in the laboratory field. So we tried how these association functions in the environmental water system. So this is a wastewater effluent diluted by double, and this is a natural wastewater effluent, and this is a river water. So this side shows the wild duckweed growth, and the other side shows the lemna associated with the PGPB. So in the natural systems, we confirm that the growth rate is improved by double or triples. So the PGPB enriched duckweed show the enhancement growth even in the environmental system. So this is the world first achievement we proved. So the next topic is why the duckweed is so interesting. Because the duckweed is a multi-talented bioresource.
Excuse me, Professor Masaki. We don't hear your voice. Please turn on the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. So you couldn't hear me from the beginning?
No, just this slide.
Just right. Okay. So this shows the multi-benefit of the duckweed. So the duckweed contains up to 50% of the starch, so which easily converts to biofuels and bioplastics by enzymes or the chemical conversions. But in the different conditions, the duckweed accumulates high proteins, which is a very nutritious plant. So the chickens feeded with the duckweed produce the darker egg yolks of the egg. So which is more higher nutrient, and also the very additives. So there are two benefits of the duckweed. And also, as I told you, so the duckweed can purify the water. So the water as a fertilizer, wastewater can be used as a fertilizer. And the growth rate is pretty high because it can grow all through the years if the sunlight is available. So the estimation is about 10 to 100 tons per hectare per year dry weight. So this is a significant high biomass production. So this shows the trade-off relationship between the protein and starch. So duckweed growing naturally contains the starch about 3% and contains the protein up to 30%. But when the duckweed is transferred into the stressful conditions, such as the seawater or the tap water, no nutrient condition, so the starch contents are immediately increased up to 45%, but the protein contents are reduced. So this is a reverse relationships. So we can control the quality of the duckweed by environmental conditions. So this is a very nice trait of this duckweed plant. So I moved to the topics of the edible duckweed, wolfia. So which is not a local food, but also the future food. So as you may know, the Thailand has a long history to produce kainam, egg of the water for food. So the most of the farms are a little bit far from Bangkok area. So this is a picture of the duckweed farmers in the Lampan district. So they produce the duckweed in the large pond and harvest using the bamboo tree and scoop up. So this is a very simple harvesting system. So that means very easy to grow. But the growth is not stable because the rainy season and dry seasons is a little bit difficult to keep the growth of the duckweed. So our hope is to help these duckweed farmers to produce constantly all through the year. Now, there are several companies established in Thailand. Our good friend, Dr. Mesa Meetam in Mahidol University, just started a venture company, Advanced Green Farms. So their system is very nice to produce the duckweed in the high hygienic production system. So that means these fresh duckweed can be served in the restaurant, also can be modified into the high valued food. So the United States are now focusing on the duckweed as a space food. So they are now trying to grow the duckweed in the no gravity systems. So this is very nice idea, I hope. So lastly, I just introduced our image of the Satreps project just started. So the duckweed is a main player. So we are collecting the many duckweed species all over the Thailand. And also we are interested in the associated microbes. So the couple of these plant and microbes is our interest. So the duckweed holobiont. Holobiont is a set of the host and associated bacteria. So we will establish a duckweed holobiont resource and research center in Kasetsart University. This is the world first resource center, we believe. And we will optimize the association of the duckweed and the duckweed plants and associated bacteria used for the wastewater treatment systems, and also the production of the welfare. And the product duckweed can be converted to the plastics and biofuels and purifying the water. So these are the collaboration with the Kasetsart University Faculty of Science and the Faculty of Engineering and the Faculty of Agroindustry and the Faculty of the Engineering wastewater treatment system. And also, we will utilize these edible duckweed for the human food to improve the value of these kainam to the functional food. So this is a collaboration with the science and also the agro-industry. And also that we are collaborating with the agriculture to produce the animal feed from the duckweed. And also our hope is to treat the wastewater from the animal farm to convert to the duckweed. So this is a resource recycling agriculture and resource recycling industry. So this is our scenario to contribute to the Thailand BCG economy in 5 years from now on. And how we plan to utilize the duckweed associated bacteria? We will prepare the 2 ponds, which is the PGPB introduction pond, which activate duckweed. And after that, we will transfer these activated duckweed to the production pond. So during the growth of the duckweed, there are natural competition between the natural bacteria and microorganisms with the PGPB. So we found about 10 days or 2 weeks after, then most of the bacteria is changed to the natural community. So we can produce the natural duckweed using these systems. and we can return a part of this duckweed to activation by PGPB. And the growth rate is improved by association of the bacteria, PGPB, and the product duckweed can be utilized as a protein resource or the starch resources. So this is a take-home message. So although the lemongrass plants, the duckweeds are only a few millimeters in size, the value is of this floating aquatic plant is extremely high. So the edible duckweed, kainam, egg of water, has been cultivated for a long time in Thailand, and its protein content exceeds 40%. So kainam is now attracting attention as a new plant protein food in Europe and the United States, and in space, even in space. So the technical support to kainam farm is planned in our SATREPS project. We'll also try to implement the technology for inexpensive production system of the lemongrass plant from wastewater and produce the variables from the product duckweed biomass, and also instructs the duckweed industry in Thailand in multiple ways. So our ultimate goal is to contribute to realize the BCG economy policy promoted by Thai government until 2026. So in parallel with this business promotion project, we will also try to uncover unique symbiotic mechanisms of the duckweed holobiont system, which should contribute to the field of natural science. So the holobiont is our keyword, a set of the host and its associated microbes. So lastly, I'd like to thanks to my partner, Professor Arinchip Samchai Bennett in Kasetsart University's Faculty of Science. So we will start the SATREPS project for 5 years. So thank you very much, Kokmaka, for attending my presentation. So if need, I'd like to take some questions and comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Masaki, for your great presentation this evening. Now we are opening for the question from the floor. Please. We have Professor Aichi. Yes, please.
May I have a question? Thank you very much. Very interesting and
Thank you.
How should I say, the attractive presentations. And I have various questions, but the first question is, you said duckweed, kainam, is the very very good functional food. What kind of function do we expect for this plant? And the second question, you said the productivity of the duckweed is very high, but it's rather difficult for us to imagine how great the productivity of this plant is. So would you please explain more concretely?
Okay, the first question about the value of the kainam. So as I told you, the kainam and duckweed contains very high proteins. So up to the 30 to 40%, which is comparable to the soybean. And more interestingly, so the duckweed kainam contains various vitamins, so which is not abundant in plant, especially the vitamin B12, which is mostly produced by the animal meats. But the kainam can supply the vitamin B12. So now the vegetarians, the vegans, are very focused on the duckweed because their vitamins are depleting, only eating the plant proteins. So this is the reason why the kainam is so much interested in the world. And the second question, why the duckweed grow so fast and also the productivity is so high, is that the duckweed is a flowering plant, but generally it multiplies asexually. So it's a clonally. So it can grow, multiply as a clone. So it's very high and very rapid, like microorganisms. And under the good climate conditions and sunlight, so it can multiply all the year, all through the year. So that's why the duckweed productivity is so high. Of course, they need the area and a huge pond with a little bit thin depth. So this is maybe a hurdle to produce 100 tons per hectare per year. But we will see, because we will try to improve the growth rate by the association of the nice bacteria. So we hope we can achieve the high production of the duckweed, which is a nice resource, not only for the food, but also the biofuels and bioplastics and also the animal feed. May I answer your question?
Thank you very much. But still, the concerning the productivity, as you have already told, the comparing other biomaterials, the productivity is high enough or not, I'm not sure.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
And are there any pharmaceutical effect on this plant?
Yeah. There is a report that the ratio of the omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acid is quite different from other plants. So the omega-3 is very rich in duckweed, so which helps some diseases, avoiding some diseases, and also some researcher reports which is contribute to the healthy longevity. So we are now facing the problem of the long lifetime, but duckweed may contribute to our healthy longevity. And another point is that our Japanese company, which is also a member of this project, is now finding some specific peptide can improve the movement of the muscles. So we hope the large production of this peptide from the duckweed will be converted to some drugs to help the elderly people who cannot walk normally, and we will see if the duckweed drug can help those elder people in future. So this is our hope.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Sounds very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Nawata, for your question as well. I'm sorry for our short time for this session. We got a couple more questions from the audience, but we probably cannot let you all ask the question because we have the other three professors would present a very interesting information. So we'll try to get you back. Please leave your question in the chat box, and Professor Masaki would answer your question later after the session. Thank you very much again, Professor Masaki, for your very interesting presentation today, and please stay with us until the end of the session. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We are going to move to the second professor today. And today we actually got two professors from the International Institute and two professors from Kasetsart University. The first two would be from abroad. And may I introduce the second professor today, Professor Cho Webiel from Food Science and Technology Department at National University of Singapore. Professor Webiel is a full professor and the head of the Department of Food Science and Technology at National University of Singapore. He is an elected fellow of International Academy of Food Science and Technology, and also an elected fellow of the Australian Institute of Food Science and Technology as well, and also the Royal Society of Chemistry UK, and also the Singapore International Institute of Food Science and Technology. He is also a member of Singapore Food Standard Committee and many trustee and committee in many food and food science association. He is currently a chair of advisory committee on evaluation of health claim for Singapore Food Agency or SFA, and he has acted as consultant or an expert panel member for a number of Singapore government organizations. And he's also a very good collaboration with Kasetsart University for a long time. And today we are pleased to have him to share his experiences and the collaboration with us on the topic of student mobility, a key attribute of global education and internationally collaborative project research. Please welcome Professor Webio.
Thank you very much, Professor Kittipong. I probably can spare more time for Professor Morikawa, actually, because I didn't prepare a very technical presentation, because I look at the theme of your session is really to talk about the benefit of out-of-bound exchange from Kasetsart University with the other universities. I thought instead of talking about my own research, which some of you may be interested, but some of you may find it boring. So I thought I'll just look at the program and see how we should promote such a program. That is the focus of my talk. If it doesn't fit into the expectation, my apologies. But before I start sharing my slides, also once again, thank you very much for the invitation. Indeed, as Professor Kittipong said, I have been a friend of Kasetsart University for quite a long time. I also want to point out we have a MOU between my department and the Faculty of Agro-Industry, which is tracing back actually, I think almost 80 years ago. So we have a lot of program between our two universities. I'm very pleased to see our student quality are really high, and we have generated a lot of outcome. So maybe tonight I just look at those of students have been spending time with me. Let me try to share my screen, and I hope it's successful and you could see it. Could you? I'm sorry. Could you see my screen?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Excellent. So as I said, I didn't pick up a very technical topic, although I will mention about what kind of research we have been doing together with the colleagues from Kasetsart University. But it's really the student mobility, the younger generation, we really want to pay attention to. You know, as an old professor, I think our future is in our younger generation, and how to making them more competitive, and how to make them to know their neighbors much better, or to know the international society much better. And that is something I want to share my thought with all of our colleagues over here. Thank you very much. Before I do that, obviously, I think I should introduce very briefly of my university, although we have been working together with the Faculty of Agro-Industry for a long time, but I realize now we have many people, many colleagues from other divisions of Kasetsart University. Just briefly, the National University of Singapore is the oldest university in Singapore, also the most comprehensive one in Singapore, because it traces back all back to 1905. So last year we were celebrating 115 years anniversary. The university is quite sizable. We have around 43,000 to 44,000 students. Among them, 32,000 undergraduate students, another 12,000 postgraduate students, so masters, PhDs, etc. Altogether, there are around 10 to 11,000 staff members, but only around 2,500 are professors, teachers. We have a lot of research staff hired by research grant and working on individual projects, etc. But of course, we have a lot of support staff as well. AUS has been lucky in terms of being recognized by our international colleagues, international peers. So among many different ranking, probably the British Times Higher Education ranking is the most recognizable, and the other one is the QS. So AUS has been always ranked around the mid-20s by Times Higher Education. That's quite stable. And the QS ranking, on the other hand, changing a bit, but lately it has been very favorable position as a number 11 in the world, these are all released a few months ago, but for this year, for 2022. Now, AUS has always been declaring it as a global university and a research intensive university. So for that, because it's in Singapore, we are the one carrying not only national university, but carrying the name of Singapore. So in this case, the education philosophy has been quite ambitious. I would think you agree with me. Okay, without reading all the paragraphs or keywords, which I highlighted in bold font, and one of the major characteristics of our graduates we want to make, okay, want to nurture, is really these global citizens. And many of you being in Singapore, and Singapore is a small island state. So our students, our people need to really have a vision and also well connected to the outside world. So among all these key attributes for today's students, such as a questioning mind, well-rounded, constructive and responsible, resourceful and enterprising communicator, well, global citizens is among the most important attributes because this require them to be sensitive to people coming from a different culture background. And Singapore is a multicultural society. And they need to be aware of the potential they can offer, but are also capable of operating. And at the same time, they need to be conscious of particularity and value and limits of their own. Therefore, it is truly putting them into a big setting at a global level. And for that, it requires students to be, the mobility to go over the border. Our students have been promoted to go outside, and we also welcome students from other universities from other countries. So the university has students coming from over 100 different countries and regions. Now, we are at this online forum, but just a few months ago, slightly more than 2 months ago, not quite 3, there was a conference held in my university, which is a joint program between European Union and the ASEAN. So it's really talking about how to collaborate between European Union and ASEAN countries and also ensuring the education quality. And this was a news report back in my university. You can clearly see the title and to get a sense of what we really are heading to. Right? And due to these challenges caused by many of the different global issues, including COVID-19 lately, and our education approach, as well as the objectives, probably need to be adjusted. And so for this particular conference, we are looking at really delivering the quality through the major 2 thrusts. One is a blended learning. So that's pedagogy approach. And the other one is really international exposure. And with this COVID-19, I think this has become even more challenging to become exposed to have international experience. But nevertheless, this is something we probably need to have a more innovative idea how to do this, right? But I think you would agree with me, and this having students going to other places, such as for having postgraduate students from Kasetsart University in my group, is really giving them benefit more than just conducting research, just conducting high quality research. Of course, as undergraduate students, their major aim is to conduct research and to publish in high quality journals. However, spending a substantial amount of time in another lab is really getting benefit more than that, I think. For example, it is a time for them to expand the professional network. And this is not only within the whole country, but also beyond that. And bear in mind, these are all young girls, young boys, they are young. And what their network is that they are making is actually the future leader network. That's the way I look at it. Some of them probably become the leader of the university, or the leader of a Kasetsart, or leader of the other Thai university or government organization. Similarly, among my students here, local students here, they will become a future leader. You can see the power of establishing such a network at an early stage by doing this. And I put an article over here. I think many of you probably are aware. ASEAN has an ambition to build the common economic economy. And the original plan was to complete it by 2015. Obviously, it's quite challenging. And now the new timeline is about 2025. And it requires all the effort from all of our universities within the region, but also the younger generation. So as I said, I'm not going to talk about too much about the detail of the research. However, I do want to acknowledge I was lucky for a number of years. I had quite a number of students coming to my lab from Kasetsart University, and particularly these 3 girls, and they had all very short name to help me to pronounce. The first one is May. I think May now is the academic staff in Chiang Mai University, from my understanding. And Tong left my lab roughly at the same time as Nam, the third one. And they are both, all of them are students, PhD students supervised by Professor Nanta Wan Third Thai, the lady on the left, and also Professor Vani Chohinchop, who is actually on the screen now, okay, and in the Zoom session as well. So these 2 ladies sent their high top student to me. And as I said, these students really enjoy themselves, not only doing research, they're working hard. Don't get me wrong. They were working hard, very hard, but they did enjoy a lot of social activity. And for my research group, I do have, before COVID-19, at least twice a year, have a group gathering. And, so this girl, let me see, this girl here is May, and many of my other students who are now actually in the industry, in the government sector already. And the second one is actually I have Tong and Nam, the 2 girls at the same time in my lab. Although Tong is Nan's student and Nam is Vani's student. So you can see they are all quite happy, okay, to have a really established a long-term friendship. But I haven't forgot about research. They were here doing serious research. And what's the research? One of my research theme is actually on baking product. I don't know how many of you enjoy bakery product, but I'm one of them. And I think a bakery product not only have the longest history in terms of processed food, humans, civilization as progressed, we develop a bakery food, but it's really a balanced a food with a balanced nutrients. Earlier our first professor talked about vitamins and the minerals and etc. The bakery product actually, particularly bread, give you a lot of that nutrients as a balanced diet. And no wonder if you look at human history, including those in Egypt and Europe, and bread has been one of the major items to sustain people's life. And even today, it's one of the most popular one. However, there are a lot of challenges. I'm sure many of you noticed, the low carb crazy sort of a movement, and also recently gluten-free. Okay, and so as a researcher, we are all addressing this latest research issue. And these 3 girls who are working on the separate topics such as how to utilize a Thai durum flours and to impart functionality in bakery product, and the other girl working on gluten-free with a reduced glycemic potential. So that's a help diabetes patients as well. And the Nan was working on the antifungal packaging, which is very relevant to bread. Okay, bread has a very short shelf life, although it's a tasty product. So extending shelf life will help reducing the waste, and also helping the sustainability and security to that matter, because you are able to provide the food in a longer distance over a longer time. And there have been a number of publications published with the first author by these three girls. So as I said, they did work hard, and I think the objectives has been achieved for this outbound exchange program. And I'll skip this one because I thought just some of you may be interested in at NUS how my department has been. My department tracing back to 1999 has a shorter history. That's what I want to emphasize. Has a shorter history compared to Kasetsart University's Department of Food Science and Technology. However, we have been growing very strongly, and recently in the international ranking has been quite favorable. So I'm conscious of time. I quickly come to the end, and once again acknowledge the organizer and International Affairs Division of Kasetsart University for your kind invitation to share the thought. Again, the emphasis is really on the younger generations of mobility. I think we need to really improve that. And of course, I acknowledge Professor Kitty Pong as the MC today, and Professor Nantawan and Professor Vani and the three girls. However, before I finish, I really want to say something to one of my very special friends. And I want to say a very happy birthday to Professor Siri Chiseri. I don't know how many of you know that, but a happy birthday, Siri. A very happy 60th, very significant birthday. I looking forward to the time we can resume traveling. I'll go to Bangkok to have a celebration together. Thank you very much for all you to listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Webel, for your very wonderful experiences sharing with us this evening. For the next speaker, we have the last two speakers from Kasetsart University. They are both a professor that published very distinguished papers in many journals. The next one, may I invite Professor Thirapap Charan Viriyapap from Faculty of Agriculture, Kasetsart University. Professor Thirapap Charan Viriyapap is currently a full professor at the Department of Entomology, Faculty of Agriculture, Kasetsart University. His research focused on vector behaviors in response to insecticides used in control interventions and respond to the use of repellents and candidate botanicals and some works on vector species complex. He has produced many publications from patents. His work centered on mosquito behavior using the other systems, such as the use of semi-field screening chambers and experimental huts. He's currently serves as a member of TDR Scientific Advisory Committee of World Health Organization and a member of an expert for global biodiversity information facilities and the international network and data infrastructure funded by the world government. And today he would share his research experience in the topic of the scientific achievements and reflections after 20 years of vector biology and control research. please welcome Professor Chirapap for his talk today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me share my slides. I have to go back to the first slide. Okay. So can you see my slide? Okay. First of all, I would like to say happy birthday to Dr. Sili because the previous speaker mentioned about the birthday of Dr. Sili. Okay, so first of all, I would like to thank Mr. Chairman, Dr. Kittipong, for the nice introduction. And today it is my great honor to be one of the panelists in this symposium. And I will talk about the scientific achievements and reflection after 20 years of vector biology and control research at the Mosquito Field Research Station in Thailand. So my research focused on vector biology and ecology. So I'm not quite sure that my talk today, you will get bored from my talk or not, but let's see. Okay. So before beginning my talk, I would like to express my sincere thanks to the following funding agency: the National Institute of Health, the Gates Foundation, the Department of Defense, and IRD from France, World Health Organization, and the Asia Pacific Malaria Elimination Network. And also I would like to thank the local funding agency in Thailand, Thailand Research Fund, National Science Technology Development Agency, and Kasetsart University Research and Development Institute at KU, and also Ministry of Defense Thailand to provide area for the field research station. Last but not least, I would like to thank my student and staff from our laboratory at Kasetsart University for their hard work and contribution. In 2001, Department of Entomology, Faculty of Agriculture, KU, set up the field research facility called the Mosquito Field Research Station, which is located in the forest setting close to the border between Thai and Myanmar. The field station is quite isolated and far from the village, which means no human homes in the radius of at least 1 kilometer. Facility in the station include the experimental hut, semi-field system, insectary, and living quarter for students and researchers. The field station is suitable for breeding ground for many local malaria vectors, including Anopheles minimus, Anopheles tyrus, and Anopheles maculatus. So these three groups belong to the complex or group that the member of this group are the important vector of malaria in this region. Vector control is the most important method to reduce the disease transmission potential. Major vector control mostly rely on various kind of chemical product in the form of repellents. Therefore, it is important to establish a well-organized field research station which provides a platform for collecting information on various aspects of insect vector biology, ecology, behavior of each vector population, including laboratory observation for understanding and exploring national relationship between human, mosquito, and disease pathogen. There are two research teams that have been conducted by our team at the Mosquito Field Research Station, which are basic research, such as mosquito biology, ecology, and applied research for vector control and innovation tools. Mosquito biology study deal with blood feeding activity, host prevalence, seasonal abundance, and species complex. Vector control has been assessed by using the semi-field experimental hut, excitatory potency, and the heat system. One of the most The example of basic research include the study of larval breeding sites, survey, biting preference, and trophic behavior of mosquito. The most important issue for malaria vector in this region is the species complex, which it cannot identify by using morphological trait. So we need to apply the molecular technique for precisely correct identification. One of the most difficulty for entomologists is how to control vector-borne diseases. And basic information is really significant. In this slide show you the example of biting cycle and biting prevalence of 7 malaria vector in Thailand, including Anopheles bimai, Anopheles minimus, Aconitus, Maculatus, Vatwongcorni, and Pseudovilmoli. Most of 7 species prefer to bite human outdoor, not indoor, outdoor, raising an issue on an outdoor transmission, whereas no effective tool is now fully available. Various outdoor human activity promote risk of infections, such as forest ranger that work in the forest, rubber tree latex collector, monk meditation, nightly human activity, and tourism. One of the most important settings for vector control evaluation is the use of semi-field system, which is located in our field station and is now used by our students and also for the international training program. For the vector control trial, our semi-field experiments provide critical information under control conditions and can be used all year round without risk of exposure to infection because all used mosquitoes were colony rare and parasite free before moving to the more natural field setting. In this slide, you will see the experimental huts constructed using the budget from the Gate Foundation. The hut has window and door traps that can be used to evaluate the mosquito behavior in response to repellent product. These huts are now being used again by student and international training program. In 2016, there was a training program on entomology and vector control for malaria elimination sponsored by Asia Pacific Malaria Elimination Network and Kasetsart University. 2 workshop sections include part 1, strengthening tool and entomological capacity for vector control program, shifting to elimination, and part 2, Mekong outdoor malaria transmission network. The workshop hosted participants from different countries in Asia Pacific region. In 2018, Department of Entomology at Kasetsart University hosted the 2nd Outdoor Malaria Transmission Network training program and field trial to test the efficacy of the new vector control tools for outdoor mosquito collection. The tool include the 4 different traps to collect mosquito, including the barrier fence traps, human decoy trap, double net trap, as compared to the standard mosquito landing catch. That you can get more information from the paper that we have published in Parasite and Vector from the meeting in 2018. In 2019, there was another workshop on the vector application and vector surveillance, which was sponsored again by the Asia Pacific Malay Network and Kasetsart University. In this workshop, we hosted 50 participants from several countries in Asia Pacific region. The 2-week workshop on improving vector identification and mosquito taxonomy skills was 2 important sessions. First session was conducted on morphological key practice to identify mosquito species at Faculty of Agriculture at Kasetsart University. And the second session was in the field research station and was about mosquito collection, specimen preparation, and identification. We have world experts on mosquito identification and field training. Experts include taxonomists from Smithsonian from the USA, James Cook University from Australia, and IRD from France to help and teach the student and participant about morphology, molecular identification for the species complex. Also, there were our Thai experts to teach students about the GIS concept, and that's it, Dr. Ratchadawan from our department at Kasetsart University. In the field, extensive training on mosquito collection, specimen preparation, preservation were made and supervised by our world experts. We have produced a total of 23 graduate students from Department of Entomology who use the mosquito field research station to conduct their own research thesis or dissertation. 7 students were at the master level and 16 students were at the PhD level. During the past 20 years, we generate almost 200 international peer-reviewed publications in both basic science and applied science in insect vectors. Of these, 50 publications were obtained from the mosquito field research station. 25.5% belong to the basic science and almost 75% belong to the applied science. As you can see from this slide, our department at Kasetsart University hosted 40 overseas students and researchers from different countries: Indonesia, USA, France, Philippines, up to UK. So the students came under the internship program. Some of them they got their own budget from their own university. And also our staff and students from our laboratory have access to work with colleagues from different countries globally. Such international collaboration had a great support to our field research station. Some provide technical and some provide scientific, which can make the field station more active and useful for entomological study. So the mosquito field research station is very unique and well-organized research facility geared to study various aspects of biology and ecology of mosquito vector species with the aim of developing and evaluating innovative new technologies and approaches for vector control, there is the only one organized field facility in this region that is our field site. And over the past 20 years, our field research station benefits from international and constructive partnerships with 40 overseas student and researcher exchanges. And this is the publication with Dr. Sujitna Kasatian as the co-author, because in one paragraph or 2 paragraphs we have mentioned about the Reinvent University in Thailand. So it's not published yet, but it we call commentary in an open access malaria journal. And I hope this paper will get published very soon. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Chirapap, for your nice research information and your research that you share to the session today. Now we would have the question from the floor.
think may be quite difficult to understand my talk precisely because my talk is quite unique, talking about the field research station and focus on vector of malaria. So maybe some of them or many of them they're quite difficult to get used to with the area that I'm working right now. But no problem at all if there is no patient.
We have a question from
Okay, good.
I think Mr. Plester.
Yes, sir. My interest, I wanted to ask you about the vector that you just presented. Are the vectors kind of endemic to society, a particular community, or is it a common vector that people in other countries are working on? How does the vector you found in your research field here in Thailand differ from the other types of vector that are very common? Because in some, I know in Africa there are a couple of research groups working on the same project as you. How does your discovery differ from theirs?
Okay, I'm not quite sure that I answer your questions correctly, but the situation in Southeast Asia actually different from African country. I know the malaria endemic in African country is very serious. 90% of cases belong are from African country, and another 10% from this region. So, and the vector difference for sure. The vector in Southeast Asia is mostly by outdoor, and the species is different from in African country. For in your I think in your country, most vector prefer to buy indoor. That is, they have the tool, they have the intervention tool to deal with the vector. But in Southeast Asian region, it's very difficult because most vector by outdoor, and we have no tools now.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much for your question. I think we'll save the rest for the discussion later, Professor Chirapat, and we invite you back to discuss about the reinventing program of the Kasetsart University later for the perspective of your international collaboration in your research in the future. All right, thank you very much, and we'll back a little bit later after Professor Mehta's talk. Next, I would like to invite Professor Mehta Charan Panit. She is a full professor from Department of Chemical Engineering, Faculty of Engineering at Kasetsart University. Professor Mehta Charan Panit's research career has been established on cleaner production concept. She has expertise in multidisciplinary research on catalyst and absorbent preparation. Her research applications mainly focus on volatile acid organic compound absorption and multifunction catalyst for green chemicals feedstock and alternative energy production from greenhouse gases. Professor Charan Panit has been invited to deliver keynote speeches at various local and international conferences. She also serves as a guest editor for the Journal of Clean Production and ChemCat-Chem, and as a reviewer for more than 40 well-recognized international academic journals. She also was given the L'Oreal Thailand Award for Women in Science with the support of the Thai National Commission for UNESCO. And she also received the PTIT Fellow Awards from Petroleum Institute of Thailand as the lecturer who has conducted outstanding academic research accepted by educational and industrial sectors in the areas of petroleum and petrochemicals. And today, last but not least, he would give a talk to us on the topic of nanocatalysts and nanomaterials for sustainable energy and environment. Please welcoming Professor Mehta for her talk this evening. Professor Mehta, please turn on the microphone. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We see your slide now.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman, and the organizing committees of the KU Online Academic Forum. Good evening, President, Vice President, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. In celebrations of the 79th anniversary of Kasetsart University, it's my great pleasure and honor to introduce our work from the Center of Advanced Study for, sorry, I need to close this. For chemicals, food, and agricultural industry, relating to the Inventing Kasetsart University program. The topics will be related to the preparations of the catalysts and nanomaterials from groups of the solid waste derived from agricultural waste and the application for sustainable energy and environment. For the content, I will start at a step from the fact and figures, the output of our work, current situation, how we start this work for more than 15 years, and after that, how we combine agriculture and engineering towards the circular economies. And then I would like to give some examples of our recent research output for the carbon dioxide utilization and others, and then wrap up with the future visions. For the fact and figures, based on the KU vision to be a world-class university, from our centers, we have 27 members, 3 professors, 1 is me, and 10 other associate professors and the younger staff classified by the faculties to be engineering faculty, 8 from Bang Khen campus and 1 from Skonakon campus, others from science and agriculture and the other centers. And then the output that we contribute to Kasetsart University for these 3 years is about more than 100 publications. I would like to start with this slide. We would like to share what is the driving force of our work and why we work in this area as the increasing of the populations, and at the same time is decrease the resource and cause the resource depletions, and also the increase of the greenhouse gas emission, and then lead to the global warming. We can categorize into 3 items like this: resource depletion, energy crisis, and also environmental impact. So from this function, the urgent problems here, we face global warming and also resource depletions. And what we should do, what should be the technology we need to do and move to. So we would like to move towards a circular economies. And the question is that who should take responsibility for this action? The question like this, the answer should be everyone. So I would like to share you about the 30 years ago in Thailand, we start with a kind of traditional linear economies. Of course, we didn't care about the climate change, biodiversity, or even the loss. We create waste and we just produce the goods, something like that. And after that, start from before year 2000, we moved to the greener productions. Of course, we start with waste minimization. We introduce the terms of reduce, reuse, recycles, or sometimes reject. But it is still not enough. We still have a lot more problems. So we move to circular economies. Start with a kind of the waste from one process and use as a secondary, we call the secondary raw material for the next process. And this is maybe not enough for the future. We need to move to the net zero society for our country by the year 2065. And for the second step, why we move to these kinds of work, we start a groups of the work for green catalysts and also green adsorbent by the introduce of the concept of greener production and sustainable development introduced from our department head long time ago. And at the moment, we move the works to a groups of the research based on carbon capture, utilization, and storage. We start with the carbon capture by preparations of many kinds of adsorbent and catalysts from bio-based materials and bio-waste, or even biomass produced from a kind of the ash from the power plant, something like that. And after we obtain these groups of the adsorbent and the catalyst, we then use it and apply for C1 utilization. For example, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and methane, something like that. In this case, for example, for hydrocarbon conversion starting from C1, from carbon dioxide methanol formation, reverse water gas shift reaction, we can prepare carbon monoxide easily, or methanation. And in this case, I would like to share you something that in the case of methane utilization, this is very important because 1 mole of methane can create or generate a big troubles compared to carbon dioxide because the impacts of the global warming is about 25 times greater than carbon dioxide. So coming to this point, we would like to share and combine between the agriculture and the engineering by using the waste from agriculture and then change to value-added products and apply for energy and environment. From this point, just a simple slide I would like to share here is that if we just focus for just only the small pore micropore like this, we will have trouble with the mass transfer. But in the case we playing with the macropore, we then have the trouble with the low activities. So why not mesoporous materials? So this is the start point. We work with zeolite long time ago, and then we moved to mesoporous silica. Of course, zeolite is very nice with the order aluminosilicate, high surface area, and many things. However, when we want to prepare fine chemicals with very large structure, for example, we would like to prepare a long-range hydrocarbon product, we do have trouble with it. So limited pore size in the case of zeolite. Let me move to the work with the mesoporous silica. And the examples of the use in this case, we start very simply from the use of white house, change to be a group of the ash, white house ash here. And then we change the ash to a simple starting materials we call sodium silicate, or sometimes we call water glass. Sodium silicate preparation very easy here. And after that, from the start point, from the agricultural waste, we can prepare many kinds of adsorbent or even a groups of the zeolite or a groups of the catalyst. And for example, CSM5 zeolite, mesoporous SBF 15 and MCM 41. Of course, the price list here also very nice. We start from the synthesis of a groups of adsorbent for just 3 grams of it. And then after that, if it's not enough, we expand the size, scale up to the larger one. And we synthesize 3 kilograms per batch by using a pre-pilot scale high pressure autoclave reactor. So in this case, not only the use of the unimodal pore or the single pore zeolite or even porous silica is maybe not enough. So we introduce a kind of hierarchical structure. We use a small pore of the structures combined with the large pore by introduce some other molecules. So in that case, we can play with the pore pattern like phase separation, infiltrate structure, or even encapsulate structure. And after that, for the raw material selections, of course, we start with quite expensive raw material like this, and we move to a very cheap one, sodium silicate over the grass, starting from agricultural waste or even the ash from biomass power plant. And for the structure directing to create the structures of it, we also use sorry. We also use a kind of the groups of the template like this, and then we move to the kinds of the natural biopolymers like hydrosan produced from the crab shells or even the shrimp shells. So in this case, a simple control of like a control of the pH alteration, something like this, play with the electrostatic interactions, we can have many kinds of the structures, skeletons of the chitosan itself, and then moving to the structures of the porous silica with the telomere structure and pore size. And in addition to a group of the material replacement, we also focus on the carbon dioxide utilization and conversion to other value-added product. In this case, the example is that we try to improve the activities of the photocatalyst working at the room temperature and add with chlorophyll modified from obtained from spirulinas and also buffalo glass, and then use it as a dye sensitized photocatalyst and combine between bio and also at normal catalyst, something like this. And we obtain very nice conversion for carbon dioxide for like a small acid productions, hydrogen production, and also biotoxic degradations, and have some publications. And in addition to a groups of the adsorbent and the catalyst preparation, I would like to share some experiments and the result recently about carbon dioxide CCUS, carbon dioxide utilization. The first one will be the carbon dioxide starting from carbon-based, and then we prepare olefins from the hydrogenation process by using 3 groups of between the different size of alumina, starting with the smaller size, medium size, and the larger size, and then functionalize with a group of potassiums. We can modify and adjust the ratios of the olefins or saturated hydrocarbon compared to the saturated hydrocarbon, olefin and paraffin ratio. And this is very nice result that we obtain from this work and have the highest record for the olefin productions and get the top 2 scientists record for Professor Thongthai Viturn here. With these works, we also work in collaboration with a foreign partnership from Tohoku University in Japan, Osaka University, and the other colleagues from Vienna University of Technology, and also share our results and result to the PTT public company. And not only the use of carbon dioxide for olefin production, we also focus on the preparations of methanol using the carbon base like this, starting from a group of the catalyst preparation over graphene oxide aerogels, and get very nice result as shown here at quite low temperature. And in our case, we also moving some parts of our work to a frontier research by using the applications of external magnetic field and modify the reactions, how we can, and with the achievement set up to the goals to produce the higher selectivities and also reactivity. In this case, we try to observe the metal phase transformation or even the conversion and selectivities by using the in situ systems obtained from a group of the researchers. And we worked together with the Synchrotron Light Research Institute, the researchers over there, and have some nice result and the publications. And the last one, the one that I mentioned about methane. Methanes also can be used like, for example, cropping reactions, starting with the screening of the catalyst, modify functionals of it, and then we recheck for the stabilities of the catalyst. And this is the examples of our result. And when we combine and everything with respect to a group of CCUS with output outcomes, we can create the national risk network between nanotechnologies and many others collaborators, and also international collaborator with the university and research institute. And we can strengthen the manpower for PhD and undergrad student, prepares a groups of a manuscript within the work of CCUS for almost 70 publications, both the type and the IP. And last year, before the end of last year, we have submitted the white paper, proposed the strategy for carbon dioxide utilization for sustainable development. And this is the work we have done within our groups of our researcher. From the whole of everything, we would like to sincerely thank to the Ministry of Higher Education through the Kasetsart University Inventing Programs and also Kasetsart University Research and Development Institute. And of course, we work under KUIAS, the Kasetsart Institute for Advanced Studies. Last but not least, I have many other staff, many other faculties who work with me. We cannot work by ourselves, so this is very strong support from our friend. Thank you very much for your kind listening. And if you have any questions, this is very welcome.
Thank you very much, Professor Mehta, for your wonderful results and all the publications you have made with your teams for from many years. Now we may have questions from the audience, please.
I think this work is quite different from the others. So maybe just give some idea for our friends. Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
So we have a question from Professor Masaki, please.
Thank you very much. So nice talk. So it's very interesting. So I'm a microbiology, so I'm very blind in the chemistry and catalyst. But I'm very interested in your technology to convert the carbon dioxide to methane, not utilizing the hydrogen gas, but utilizing the water. So the CH4 plus H2O make the CH4. It's very nice. It's a kind of an ideal idea. Yeah. But my question is, how about the energy balance? Is it cost competitive or it's reasonable method to utilize to production of the methane from the carbon dioxide? Okay,
I would like to tell you something. In the case, we would like to work with the hydrogenation process. It is very important that we need to focus on the source of hydrogen. Yeah, if we can start with the source of hydrogen from water and a kind of electrocatalysis, and in that case, or even we start from the solar energies, that we can raise the temperatures up to more than 800 it is very nice for the process. So in that case, if we can start with the kinds of the blue hydrogens, the process will be very possible, because every reaction we can start with the temperatures lower than 200 degrees Celsius. And in the case of the photo reaction, it will be start at room temperature. So, but in the case of for the conversion and quite low when compared with the other reactions. Okay, this is some idea. Okay. This is your answer. Are you satisfied with the answer? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm very interested in your idea to use the water, directly use the water to make the methane from carbon dioxide.
Two process right now that we work with the waters and carbon dioxide. One is the water catalysis. We use the carbon dioxide mixed with waters, and then we generate hydrogens and also change to a small acid. In this case, the temperatures and the energy supply for the process is very, very low. So in that case, carbon neutral is very possible. In other case, if we start with the hydrogen from the fossil fuel process, it's not possible to count as the carbon balance. So in that case, we need to move to the use of the solar energies or even the photocatalysis. It will be better. And some of the works I proposed here is that the use of some other experiment under like a magnetic atmosphere. So in that case, we also can reduce the we can increase the activity by reduce some kinds of the we can control the surface of the catalyst or even the movement or trajectories of the reactant. Is that okay for you?
So thank you very much.
So in that case, it is turn to be better. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question, Professor Masaki, and thank you very much for your very nice answer, Professor Mehta. We are coming back to the last couple minutes of this session. We are going to discuss about reinventing program of Kasetsart University, and of course we have two professors from International Institute giving us an idea of the advanced research, especially for duckweed. This earlier in this section, I would like to ask you about the experiences of research collaboration with KU. Professor Masaki, please share a little words, a couple words for your experiences in research collaboration with professors at Kasetsart universities, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. So we are starting a very nice collaboration with, it's a kind of the multiple collaboration, not limited to the Faculty of Science, but also the agro-industry and agriculture and engineering and so on. So unfortunately, under these COVID-19 conditions, I got no chance to visit the Kasetsart University. But in near future, I'd like to discuss face-to-face and start the project much more efficiently. So that's all. So that I.
Okay, you just started with the research collaboration with us, I guess, and we hope that we would have more and more in research collaboration in the future. Then, and we are very welcome you all to visit us here in Bangkok.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I would like to move to the second panelist today, Professor Webel. We have a question about the important points for long sustaining student mobility program between NUS and KU. Would you please give us an idea about what is an important point for you to work sustainably with us for the student mobility program?
Sure. Thank you very much. I think at the moment at a postgraduate level, particularly on research, we have multiple channels for doing this. I mentioned in my presentation about receiving postgraduate students from Kasetsart University in my lab, and also my colleagues also did the same thing. But before COVID-19, we also have an annual conference organized. At the beginning, it's between NUS and the Tokyo University of Marine Science and Technology, and later on involving Hokkaido University and also Kasetsart University. So before COVID-19, we sort of were rotating, among all the different sites. That was running very well because it was not just a typical academic conference. Professors are talking. No, the purpose is for younger generation. So we ask for all the postgraduates to talk, and the professors give comments, from different institutes. And unfortunately, COVID-19 stopped it, and we were thinking about having an online conference. Then we thought the online conference wouldn't achieve that. And let's hope COVID-19 will go away later this year. Let's hope so. If not, indeed, we would really to explore the online conference and rather than just leaving it. The challenge is actually more in the undergraduate students because of the language issue. So, for example, if I want to send any of my students to your university, I would have to make sure there is enough module which are taught in English, therefore they can get their credit transfer back. Otherwise, they wouldn't be keen. So that fact also make it like most of my university students going to overseas is basically in English-speaking country, or some of them studying a second language, and then they will go to the country which they are studying. So yes, indeed, there are a lot of challenges where we know, but that exactly require us to think more actively on how to overcome the difficulties.
Okay, thank you very much. And last question for you, Professor Webel. What is your expected output or outcome from the research collaboration, not only with KU, with other university in abroad as well?
Thank you very much for the question. It's actually, the scientific discipline I've been working on is a food science and technology. Now, food is very interesting. Food has both local characteristics and global. So the collaboration we tend to do are generally looking at two areas. One area is a fundamental contribution by the students, by research, to the understanding the food system from material viewpoint, from processing viewpoint. But on the other hand, we also want to create results that are beneficial to the local society. Because this is very different from some of the fundamental discipline like chemistry, physics, for example. This is very direct. If you cannot create value to the local society, you probably need to ask yourself whether there is a need for the existence of this particular discipline. So that's what we are looking at. And Singapore has a massive program in the last 2 years in terms of promoting food research, as well as the local food production in Singapore. So there are plenty of opportunities when you're looking at it from these two angles. And they are not in conflict. You actually can combine them very nicely. And we need a high quality researcher, obviously. Smart mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well done, Professor Webel. Thank you very much for your answers. And lastly, we would like to have some idea from professor from Kasetsart University sharing about the KU reinventing program, the perspective of your viewpoint to boost the research collaboration and also research output. May I start from Professor Tirapap, please?
Thank you, Dr. Kittipong, right? Kittipong. Yeah. I think the KU reinventing program is very fantastic. and it's very good because we need the collaboration between country and country, and by doing this, I think our student can explore and educate the student not only at KU, but they can work with the colleague from overseas. I think this is a good experience for students, and I would like to have to see these exchanges among the student and our student and overseas students. And the other thing that I think once the student work with the professor from outside, in the future they might start another group because we are turning old. I think myself is maybe getting old now, so I think it's better to start having a new generation start working together. I dream about this, and I think we should educate the students like this via the reinventing program by Kasetsart University. And I would like to thank everyone deal with this program. I'm very happy with the KU reinventing program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Chirapap. And next, we have the last lady with us discussing about the KU reinventing program. Please share some viewpoints that you also got the support from this program. Please, Professor Mehta.
Yeah, thank you. So in the case of the KU Reinventing Program, I think we have three groups amongst the works. It's about the outbound exchange programs and the visiting professors collaboration professor program. And also the other ones is the conference. So I think in any case, the case of the exchange students or even the staff is very nice, and we have the challenge for our staff to work with the foreign professors. In that case, this is very good experience for everyone in KU. So in that case, even in our groups, we also plan to send our young staff to foreign country. But at the moment, we do have the troubles with the COVID-19, and the staff we plan to send to Japan, she cannot move, she cannot go anywhere. So we just move for a while, but we still work and keep on going, and we discuss more and start some work here. So that is the start point. We cannot wait. So within the short period, from the 6 months, we need to reduce to 4 months. So in that case, we move forward like this. But in the case of activities for the foreign exchange, like a visiting professor, this is very nice because sometimes we can share experience direct from the foreign country. We can do any times, anywhere. So this is very, very challenging for us. So I love this program. And in the case of the last one, like Professor Morioka said, and the other professor said, we do have the trouble with the on-site preparations, on-site seminar. So sometimes if we cannot, in the case we cannot do and cannot work like a on-site seminar or conference, we can do combined process. So this is a challenge for us to create a network. So this is the good experience, and also very, very, very fruitful for our process and the program for the inventing universities. And I hope from these kinds of the work we set for this year, it can improve the situations of the publication or even citations of the university. But thank you.
Thank you very much for your discussion, Professor Mehta. And now we are coming to the end of the first session this evening. I would like to thank you all for all the panelists that sharing your research updates and also your experiences of research collaboration with KU, and also our professor from KU that you have been working very hard and collaborating with the other university and institutes overseas. Lastly, I would like to thank all the audience and also the panelists that are staying with us until the end of this session today. And I hope that you really got a very good chance to listen to very wonderful research updates, especially for the frontier research and also the way or the guideline for the future collaboration with and also how to strengthen the research collaboration with our collaborative partners in overseas. And I would like to thank the organizer for a very wonderful session this evening, and I would return this session to Professor Matthew for the next session. Thank you very much, and you have a great evening.
Well, thank you very much. That was indeed impressive. The array, the diversity, and the scope of the research and collaboration is truly, truly impressive. And thank you so much, Dr. Kittipong, for leading us through that. This is scheme number 2, the second session. It's the same format as we've just had. There'll be 3 speakers. All 3 of these folk are visiting professors here at the university under the Visiting Professor Program, which is part of the Reinventing the University program that is ongoing. They have invited to share their expertise, which is in deep sciences, technologies, and frontier research, as well as to talk about their experiences as being a visiting professor under the Reinventing the Kasetsart University program. Again, it'll be about 20 minutes with time for questions at the end of each presentation, and then I hope we have time at the very end for a wrap up as well. Oh, by the way, it should indicate that you should feel free to drop a question to the chat, of course. And if we don't get to it here tonight, we will make sure that it gets on to the presenter so that they're able to make a response as they get time to do so. All right, so let's get started with this panel. Our first panelist is Professor Toru Nakashisuke. I did that very bad. Nakashizuka.
Yes.
Yeah, very sorry. I actually had practice, so I'm kind of upset at myself because I had practiced this. All right. Anyway, I'm going to synopsize the bio a little bit. The bios are in the handbook, and so they're very impressive. And so if I were to do it, it would just be a little bit long. So I'm going to synopsize these bios. They're in the handbook for you. Professor Nakashizuka has been Director General of the Forestry and Forest Research Institute since 2020. He has been a professor and researcher primarily in forestry and forest products and the ecology, both at Tokyo University and Tohoku University. His major expertise is in forest ecology and biodiversity science, and currently he is conducting a lot of studies on climate change and impacts on ecosystems and on sustainable forest management and diversity. He has co-edited a number of books focusing on the forest, particularly temperate forest community. And most recently, he has a book on the ecological impacts of tsunami on coastal ecosystems, which obviously was based on lessons learned from the Great East Japan earthquake. And so, Professor, I'll let you go forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much for very nice introduction for me. Sawadee-ka. So may I speak? Right?
Yeah, we can hear you. You're doing
okay,
well.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I will share my presentation here. Ooh. Okay, so I'd like to talk about some collaborating researches up to now and in the future with Kasetsart University. So first of all, I should say that congratulations for 79th anniversary of the Kasetsart University. Today I'm talking about some collaboration in MWRS a Mekong watershed research station, which I first visited the Thailand. I visited a Mekong water research station to start some collaboration with Kasetsart University and the Royal Forest Department. And we have developed the collaboration in another phase. And I'd like to mention about some future collaboration too. This is the photo taken in 2007 in Mekong Watershed Research Station. The long-term ecological studies in Mekong Watershed Research Station was started in 1990. It is almost 30 years ago, and the study was actually started by the Faculty of Forestry, Kasetsart University, Royal Department, and my institute at that time. I'm now working for the same institute as before. At that time, I was some researchers in the Forestry and the Forest Products Research Institute, and later I moved to the Kyoto University as a professor, and then Tohoku University, also a Research Institute for Humanity and Nature at Kyoto. So during such kind of my career, so all the time I have been collaborating with the Kasetsart University. This is a very nice photo to show our collaborators. Also, we have been collaborated a lot of Thai people, but among them I have been three. I have supervised 3 students from Kasetsart University up to now. And this is the figure showing our long-term research study plots, which is 200 meter by 200 meter. It takes a very long time to enumerate all the trees, actually, but it is a very unique forest among the forest in the worldwide. Particularly the dry seasonal forest is not really known by the many people many ecologists in the European and US nor in Japanese ecologists. We started to elucidate the forest dynamics at the beginning, because at the beginning of the 1990s, it is a very serious global environmental issues that are decrease of the tropical forest. So we counted the number of the trees in a 4-hectare plots, and the number which is shown here is in some recruitment during 2 years or something. And what we found is some kind of the recruitment of the new trees depends not only not by the light climate, but also some factors other than light. So this is a photo which showing inside the forest. He is Dr. Dokrak Marot. He's the first student who came to Kyoto University and under my supervision to get a PhD. As usual, you can see the forest was covered, very dense cover of bamboo here. And this map shows some kind of the 4 species of bamboo, which is likely to explain more about some forest dynamics, right? In particular with recruitment. New recruitments were more dependent on dwarf bamboo than light. And they were concentrated in the areas of young bamboo colonies, which is just after the mass flowering and mass dieback of the bamboo. And another factor that's very unique to your forest is a fire. Dry forests often suffer serious fire disturbances. And this is showing some kind of the seedling survivorship, a tree seedling survivorship, which is depending more on some species. It is showing some gaps and closed canopy, but some experiments showing some watered or control on a fire treatment. So some species showing some very good dependence on fire, but I don't know, lights. But then if they had a fire, some species suffers fire, they decreases very much. So of course, light, which is controlled by the canopy trees and the bamboo as well as the canopy trees. But of course, they depending on fire, some species. And another important issue when we see your forest in a seasonal dry forest is a bamboo ecology. So as you may know that the bamboo is a monocarpic species. They flowers once in their lifetime, and once flowers, they die. So it is very rare events, but we are very lucky to meet such kind of the rare event twice. One in the two species of the giant Chlora arboresciata and then Cephalostachyum. The blue line and a living come of the bamboo suddenly made flower and dies, and another species died in another year. So such kind of the phenomena caused a very big change in a forest. So that just after the bamboo flowering, they shed bamboo seeds, and the bamboo recovers from the seeds, as you see in the slides. And some tree seedlings also come up with the seedling of bamboo. And then in some cases, the regeneration of bamboo fails. Instead, the bananas is coming up. Thus, the forest dynamics in a seasonal dry forest is not something like this. Oh, sorry. Firstly, the some sparse canopy trees and the bamboos covered in the ground. Then a bamboo dies and sometimes catch fires. Then the tree recruitment occurs. It's very unique features of your deciduous dry forest. There's such kind of the long-term researches have been continuing even up to now. And another 10 years, last 10 years or 15 years, we developed this study to another phase. Another two students came to the Japanese university. The left one is Panida, and the right one is Ramtai. He's now working for a major university in northern Thailand, and Panida is working for the Chiang Mai University now. And they started the studies about reef function traits and maybe relating to an ecosystem services. The functional trait, some of you may know that every trees have leaves of different characteristics and ecological characteristics and functions. Some leaf size or leaf thickness and leaf toughness or leaf mass per areas have different, suggesting a different function of their leaves. So we detect some kind of the characteristics of the leaf traits, so we can estimate what function the tree has. So the factors determining the seedling dynamics may be changing, both light or some environment and a distance from this kind of the forest, and then negative density effects, and then maybe some kind of the regeneration occurs. And Ramtai summarized some kind of the leaf trait, like an LMA is relating to survival or a moisture and some density effect, recruitment, right? And heavier woods may be relating to survival and moisture or something. Leaf toughness relating to moisture or density effects. Large seeds also reflecting something like this, and large leaf and thicker leaves or something like this. So we can estimate the function of ecosystem or some kind of the later we are expanded the function to an ecosystem services. So both disturbance and climate make determine the composition, tree composition of the forest, and each trees composing in a forest have their own functions suggested by the tree of leaf traits, functional traits. So the community level, we can estimate, if we can know the functional trait of every tree in a forest, we can estimate the community level functions, and then also some ecosystem function, then and dynamics of the forest. And Panida made some kind of the research on the such kind of the ecosystem function, in particular on decomposition. So firstly we made a permanent plot in a Mekong watershed research station in Canterbury and Kasetsart, also in some southern areas. Each of the forests Hitoka forest in Kasetsart, and also the evergreen, dry evergreen forest here, and moist mixed decidual forest in Canterbury here. So we compare some kind of the leaf decomposition and estimated for species for the species estimated, or we have already estimated some functional traits then, and made an experiments for decomposition. And what we found is some decomposition rate depends both on an environment and then a leaf trait. In an environment, the soil moisture is very effective to control the decomposition rate, and the tanning of the leaf, tanning contents, controlling the decomposition rate. And so we are now expanding such kind of the results into some all over the South Asian countries, together with some result which I've got in Malaysia. So we building up the very quite big database on the leaf functional traits in South Asian countries, and we can estimate the ecosystem-based functional traits for various forest types here. And then we can estimate some kind of the combining some kind of the remote sensing imageries and with some composition, then a composition with a leaf functional trait to estimate in this case the forest types. But if we combine it with some leaf functional traits, we can estimate some kind of the leaf mass areas, and then we can estimate the maximum photosynthesis rate of all the areas of South Asian countries in left parts. Also, if we can know the lignin contents of the tree species, then we can make figures like some decomposition rate in the South Asian countries. That is now which we are expecting more to develop for another or several other ecosystem functions or ecosystem services of the tropical forest in the future. So that's we are very happy and very lucky to get the collaboration with Kasetsart University, and both of the students are sitting on the big logs, and I'm very happy to remove the obstacles to go further. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so very much. It's very interesting and obviously very vitally, critically important to all of us. We have some questions or comments from folks. Okay, I encourage people to put a comment or question in the chat, and also to contact the speakers directly, of course, or we can help you to make contact if you don't know how to reach them individually, but we can help you in that regard. Any questions or comments? All right. Well, then, thank you so very much, Professor. I found it
Okay,
very
thank you
interesting.
very much.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Let us proceed then to our second speaker. Our second speaker is Dr. Mikola Adamek. He did his graduate studies and doctoral studies focusing on fisheries and agriculture sciences of fisheries and environmental protection, water environmental protection. Since 2009, he has worked in the Fish Disease Research Unit at the Institute for Parasitology, the Center for Infectious Medicine at the University of Veterinary Medicine in Hanover, Germany. His studies have involved innate immune responses of cultured fish, focusing on their pathophysiology. It includes research on vaccinations against main viruses in aquaculture. He has co-authored over 80 peer-reviewed publications, and so has an H-index of more than 20, very impressive, in field of fish diseases, fish immunology, infectionology of viral diseases in fish. Professor, please go forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I will try to share my screen, and I hope it will work. Can you see it? Yes.
Yes, we can. Yeah, there,
Okay.
perfectly. Perfect.
Thank you one more time for inviting me to this great meeting. I'm a bit intimidated to be among such a great scientists and presenting such a comprehensive work on so many different topics. I will talk a bit smaller groups, a bigger impact, at least from our perspective on research on the global diseases in aquaculture. And I allowed myself to add Professor Win Surachetapong as a co-author of this presentation, as he is the linchpin of the research which we are right now doing with the KU University in Thailand. Let me first start to talk something about myself, and I'm sorry about this, that I'm talking about myself. I'm coming from the Germany, so from the University of Veterinary Medicine, from a small group working on fish diseases. And we are always involved in core activities of research, diagnostic, and teaching. And we are always seeing new diseases popping up in aquaculture and trying to solve them in nearest future to somehow prevent the losses to human food chain. So I'm an infectiologist, and let's say I will tell you what infectiologists are doing. We are somehow discovering pathogens, and then we are asking ourselves if these pathogens are making any harm or they are not harmful at all. So how we are doing it? We are doing this on studying how the fish organism is behaving during the infection and what is the outcome of the disease. This is quite complicated system, so I will be not going into details about this, but we have to see if there is a response to the pathogen, how we can characterize the disease, and later on, how we are able to prevent the disease or somehow cure the disease. So we are not doing this alone. I'm a bit hands-on person, so I'm trying to do a lot of research my own, but the research is always based on collaborations, and I will be talking about such a collaboration in this presentation. So we started to work with fish diseases, and fish diseases, especially viral diseases, which are deadly, are having the same outcome. There is a lot of fish which are, as we say, belly up, so they are lost in the aquaculture, and with this fish, the livelihood of farmers and clients can be jeopardized. So if the disease like koi herpes virus attacks carp, there are mass mortalities, and farms can be even closed because they are not able to cope with the losses which they are experiencing. The same is with carp edema virus, this one which is in the middle, which is causing the sleepy disease of carps, or tilapia lake virus, which I will be talking about today. The tilapia lake virus is a global phenomenon, and the global research has to be directed to it. But first, I will talk about the research which we did earlier before we started to work with tilapia lake virus. We did a lot of research on koi sleepy disease caused by carp edema virus. And we saw that if we understand the disease itself, we are able better to treat it. And I will be not going into details here, but the disease is causing damage to gills of fish, and gills are used by fish for respiration, but also for nitrogen exchange, and so removal of toxic waste, of metabolism, and also for salt balancing, so osmoregulation. And if we see this disease, it is causing this kind of behavioral changes in which the fish are falling asleep. And this is caused by the ammonia intoxication, but the death is caused by the salt disbalance. And adding the salt to water can cure this disease in a way that we are alleviating the symptoms and somehow providing fish with time to cure or clean the virus out of their organisms. And researching on this pathogen, we discovered that collaboration is very important into understanding and solving the problems. So we thought that we will look for other pathogens which are right now threatening global aquaculture. And one of these pathogens came out into our view was tilapia lake virus, which is currently the main global problem in aquaculture. And you can see that not only the aquaculture magazines are talking about this, but also more global and more not specialized publications were made about this virus. Of course, this was pre-pandemic, and it was even more noteworthy to see that, for example, the Atlantic is talking about some disease in fish which can harm and threaten the human consumption of fish and also food security. So we thought that we will start to work with this virus, and then we started to look for collaborators. The virus is a global virus, but it is not in Europe. So we don't have an access to our own samples. And since its discovery in Israel, it was discovered concurrently in Thailand and in Ecuador. So it was on 3 continents when people realized that there is a problem. And we started to browse through publications and found that the tilapia itself is a very important fish because it has grown so much over the last years 400% growth since 2020, but the growth is somehow starting to slow down. The tilapia is the global fish, and it is right now fourth in the newest statistics. I think second even a global fish, which is it encompasses over 5% of the full aquaculture production, and several countries are very important in production of it. And Thailand is one of the biggest producers. So it was not very surprising that people who are working on the disease causing a mortality in this fish are also from Thailand. And mostly it was Vin, who was working on this, Dr. Surachenpong, who was working on this, and we were seeing his publications, the early publications, in a lot of places, and we decided that this will be the person who we should work with about this disease. So this is Dr. Surachenpong. He is a lovely person, and I have to tell you that we contacted him, and we contacted some other researchers all over the globe which were working with this disease, and we had the best, let's say, response from Vin. So we had this kind of conversation: how can we help, and how we can collaborate? And the answer was clearly and very quickly, yes, we should collaborate, and we can find research in which we can help in solving this problem. So we met before COVID, just before COVID, on one of the conferences, and we had a really fruitful conversation over some really tasty food in Portugal. And then we decided that we will work together on certain topics which are the core topics for the research of Dr. Surachenpong. So we decided to not focus on everything, and this is the summary of what he is doing. We thought that we will just find some subjects which we are very proficient in, and we can help quickly generate results. So we thought that, let's say, immune responses, vaccination, and prevention would be the one of the topics. And we were thinking about looking at the genetic resistance of tilapia to the infection, because we had already some research done in carp for this. Then modeling of the disease in zebrafish, which we also were already doing with other diseases. And then about prevention, looking at the blocking viral entry and developing some antiviral drugs. For this, we decided to build a bit bigger group, and I contacted several scientists in Europe and in Africa. This was Alex Rebel, who is geneticist. Then Christopher Rakus, who is immunologist. We decided to also contact Alberto Falco, who is a person who is responsible for developing antiviral drugs, and Professor Rahman from the university in Egypt, who is a biologist and head of the biology department. And she was a visiting scientist in our lab. And we decided that we will be working, when she's in our lab, on the tilapia lake virus. So I will not go into details about the results itself. I will present you only two of them. One will be about zebrafish modeling of the immune responses, pathology, and tissue tropism. And we found very fundamental results, which were already published in a couple of publications. Another one will be coming. They were published in the Frontiers in Immunology, Fish and Shellfish Immunology, and Development and Comparative Immunology. Then I will be talking about resistance. we found a resistant line, which will be a very important part of the very short-term response to this disease and limiting the losses of the fish in the aquaculture. And I will be not talking about the other 3 points because the time is limited and I don't want to bore you to death. So starting with the zebrafish. What we saw and what is very fundamental for this disease is that the virus is persisting in brain. So the virus is infecting several organs, but it is over the time only staying in brain. And it is very happy in the brain. It is still being there after 90 days post-infection. And the mortality in tilapia happens in the first week. So it can persist. If the fish survives, it can persist for very long in the brain. And then we saw that this virus is also causing some immune responses. And here we have only labeled microglia. So these are immune cells in brain, which activation of this microglia is the final part of the response. Brain should not respond to the pathogens in a very drastic way, because brain is very important part of our end fish, let's say, well-being, and any immune responses can damage it. And we saw that there is immune response, there's pro-inflammatory immune response in brain. What is the outcome of this response? The outcome of this response is a behavioral change of the fish, and fish are starting to move less, so they are feeling sick. But what is more important, they are stopping to grow, they are stopping to eat, and they are decreasing in size even over the time of the experiments which we were doing. So what we can see is that the tilapia lake virus can have two impacts. Of course, it can cause the mortality in the tilapia, but also the survivors might be less efficient in using the food, and they might be less efficient in growing, and that's why they might be also less efficient in utilizing the resources which the farmers have in their disposal to grow the fish, and also lower the profitability and increase the, let's say, the environmental footprint of the fish. So this has to be taken in account in fighting the disease. And so this was the bad news. The good news is that some research which I did with collaborators, we found a naturally resistant strain of the tilapia. So we did infection experiments in a very classical way when we were injecting and also cohabitating some animals. When we inject the virus is capable of killing any fish. And we see the mortality after 11 days, we have no fish in the system which are still alive. I have to say something that this is approximated mortality. So we are removing the fish when they are developing a very severe clinical signs, so to not make them suffer even more. But what we see is that one strain of tilapia is completely not developing clinical signs. And we see this also in virus load. So virus load is if you have a lot of virus, you probably are sick. If you have low virus amount, you are not sick. And this one strain has a very low level of virus in the body. We can see this also in this picture here on the right side, that the black spots are the viral positive cells, and they are much higher in MAN than in ELM strain. So the strain is quite significantly resistant. Then we looked why the strain is resistant, and we looked at the immune responses. Again, I will not bore you with this, but we found that classical antiviral response, which is a very important part of the immune responses of fish, are upregulated and quickly upregulated in this fish, and then it goes down, while in the other fish, it is upregulated slower, and it grows up over the time in which the virus cannot be anymore controlled. We see also increased pro-inflammation, which is causing the clinical signs of the disease. So we found that the El Molo strain is less susceptible to the disease, has lower virus load, and it has a very characteristic immune responses for which we can then search in other animals. And also we could use the El Molo strain to develop resistance crosses and by marker assist selection resistant strains of production tilapia. So this is very important part of the stopgap, let's say, solution to tilapia lake virus infection. The future is about leveraging the visiting professor program, and we will be together co-supervising a postdoc, Dr. Ratatamon, who will be working on final solving the problem. So we will leverage our knowledge in vaccinology in other viruses and try to develop vaccines. Right now we are toying with several approaches, from a very simple one to a bit more complicated, but we have to somehow at the end balance the complication of the approach with the feasibility in a field. So the future is, let's say, hopefully very fruitful in more publications and more joint research based on the visiting professor program. This kind of research is not done by myself. There is a lot of people involved, and I would like to thank them. And I would like to also thank the KU University for let's say, allowing me to participate in this program, because I think this will be very important to solve this global problem in tilapia aquaculture. Thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you so very much for a really fascinating and frankly a little bit scary presentation. As someone who does eat tilapia, I was a little bit dismayed about this issue and can see how it would be such an issue worldwide. Are there any questions or comments? I'm sure there are. There should be. Questions, comments? Okay, again, feel free to put a question into the chat, or we can follow up later, of course. Yeah. Yes.
Yes. My question is, does this tilapia virus affect a human? I mean, how have you ever come across any situation where human is affected by virus, kind of becoming a vector of transmission?
The question, yeah. Did you hear the question okay? You could hear the question okay?
I hope so that I did. So if this virus is dangerous for human
exactly.
organism, yes? No, it is not. So the viruses of fish are having quite narrow, most of them at least, have a quite narrow host range. And also they are somehow dependent on the temperature. So fish are living normally in a lower temperature than human body. And the viruses itself are very ineffective in this temperature, and also they don't have ability to infect the human cells, even in vitro. There are some viruses which are infecting human cells in vitro, but they are very not common. Tilapia lake virus is not one. And this is an advantage of the virus, or very good thing about the virus, but it is disadvantage for us because we are not able to tap to the zoonotic pool of money, because this virus is not dangerous for humans. But this is just a, let's say, joke. It is good that this virus is not dangerous for humans, because it is quite well distributed all over the world. So it would be a global problem if it is a problem for or a pathogen or zoonotic pathogen. But there is no zoonotic potential of this pathogen whatsoever.
Thank you. Other questions, comments?
I do have another question. Are there possibilities of some this tilapia virus affecting other kind of fishes? In the case where there are more than a pool of a single strain or species of fish in a pool. So is it possible that there could be a kind of trans-infection between species, something like that?
It's a brilliant question. From our knowledge currently, there is no other fish species which can be infected naturally. So we see that we can induce the disease and some infection in zebrafish, for example. But this is only when we inject the virus. And there are some other fish species which can replicate the virus when they are injected, but there is nothing yet recognized, at least as far as I remember, which is indicating that this virus can be dangerous for other animals. But being dangerous for tilapia is, I think, enough. Because tilapia is such an important fish species that even without host jump, this is a very big problem. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions, other comments? Great. All right, well, thank you so very much, Dr. Mikolai, for your Adamek, for your very interesting presentation. And we of course, we're delighted with the level of collaboration that you seem to be having with your partners, including us, of course. So thank you so very much. Okay, the third panelist is Dr. Mateos Kofas. He has been an endowed professor in the Department of Chemical and Biological Engineering at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in the United States since 2011. He works in the field of metabolic engineering and systems biotechnology, with a particular emphasis on the biosynthesis of natural products. He is the editor of Journal of Biotechnology Advances and Metabolic Engineering Communications, and serves on the editorial board of several journals. I'm not going to read all the journals. There are several journals here. He has published more than 140 peer review papers and holds a number of patents, many of which have been commercialized. Recently, he was elected fellow of the American Institute of Medical and Biological Engineering Society. So I will let Dr. Mateos Kofas go forward now. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the very kind introduction, and thank you so much for the invitation. It's really my great pleasure to be here today. This is actually my first interaction with the Kasetsart University, even though I've known a number of colleagues from that university in the past few years. So I'm looking forward to our collaboration. So it just started, as a matter of fact. So I'm looking forward to the great things that we can do in the coming months, and of course, my visit later this year. So my work is a little bit different from what we have heard so far. I work in the area of metabolic engineering and synthetic biology. As you heard, I work mostly in the area of natural product biosynthesis. And today I chose to talk about the biosynthesis of a group of natural products that derive from animals. So specifically the sulfated glycosaminoglycans, such as chondroitin sulfate, and how we can biosynthesize them in an animal-free format by using recombinant E. coli. So the work that I'll be talking about today is a paper that came out a few months ago in Nature Communications, and this is basically the paper, and you can find a lot of more details given that I have a very short time in this paper. So what are the sulfated glycosaminoglycans that I'll be talking about today? They're complex polysaccharides. As I mentioned, they're basically found in animal tissues, and they covalently attach to various proteins that exist at the cell surface in order to form proteoglycans. Now, there are four major types of sulfated glycosaminoglycans. The first one that I'll be talking about today is chondroitin sulfate. The second one is dermatan sulfate. The third one is keratan sulfate. And the fourth, and perhaps the most famous one, is heparan sulfate, that's commonly known as heparin, which is basically the most commonly used anticoagulant drug in medical applications today. So all those four major types of sulfated glycosaminoglycans are synthesized in mammalian cells, such as, for example, human cells and animal cells, by following three major steps. The first step is the biosynthesis of three major precursors starting from glucose. So those precursors are UDP glucuronic acid, UDP N-acetylglucosamine, and UDP N-acetylgalactosamine. So the second step is the polymerization of those three precursor UDP sugars in order to form a polysaccharide chain, such as, for example, the heparan chain or the chondroitin chain, depending on what kind of polymerase you use. The last step is what we call the post-polymerization modification. So once you have formed those polysaccharides, you have a number of modifications that can happen to their chain. The most common type of modification is the sulfation of those polysaccharides at different hydroxy groups along the polysaccharide chain. You can also have things such as, for example, isomerizations, where one sugar group is isomerized to a different sugar group. But again, the most common one, and the one that I'll be covering in this presentation today, is the sulfation, resulting in a heavily sulfated polysaccharide polymer. And it's important to mention here that those polysaccharides do not have any medicinal activity if they're not sulfated. And it's actually the sulfation itself that results in their biomedical applications, such as, for example, the anticoagulant activity of heparin. Now, as I mentioned, those are polysaccharides that are derived from animals, such as, for example, from shark cartilage and from bovine tissues and porcine trachea. So in the case of chondroitin sulfate, the US market is estimated to be at around $340 million. That was the number back in 2016. And there's a 3.3% yearly increase. In the case of chondroitin sulfate, it's prescribed both as a pharmaceutical, mostly in tissue engineering applications. It's also prescribed as a nutraceutical for patients that basically suffer from osteoarthritis ailments. So again, the main source of those polysaccharides, animal tissues. Now, we believe that there's a lot of problems with the current production using extraction from animals. So the first big problem is that there is a lot of product heterogeneity. So you're basically going to get different chemistries, so different molecular weights of those polysaccharides, and also different sulfation pattern, depending not only on the animal that you're using to extract the molecules, but also the tissue that you're using to extract the molecules. So that results in a lot of variability from different sources. It's also very prone to prion and viral contamination. It's also prone to adulteration crisis, something that actually is the motivation for the work that I'll be talking about today. We do believe that in general, agriculture can potentially be unsustainable, especially given the fact that the living conditions are improving around the world. So there is a lot of environmental impact. And finally, and something that we should not basically underestimate, is that there are a lot of cultural and religious limitations So there is a growing movement of vegan and vegetarian people, especially here in the United States. And this is an increasing percentage of the population that basically refuses to eat products derived from animals. So for these purposes and for these reasons, we actually were motivated in order to develop animal-free production methods for those polysaccharides by basically using metabolic engineering, specifically applied for, in the case of E. coli. So there are a number of bacteria out there that can actually produce capsular polysaccharides. So for example, Streptococcus species can produce hyaluronic acid, which is another polysaccharide that doesn't exactly fall under the category of sulfated glycosaminoglycans because it's unsulfated, but it does have a chemistry that resembles quite a lot the sulfated glycosaminoglycans. Pastorula multocida, which is a pathogenic microbial strain, different strains can actually produce different polysaccharides, including a polysaccharide that does look like heparin and chondroitin. But again, it is an unsulfated polysaccharide. Now, in our lab, back in 2011, we identified an uropathogenic E. coli strain, E. coli K4, that actually produces a polysaccharide that does look like chondroitin. There are two issues with this polysaccharide. The first one is that it's a fructosylated chondroitin polysaccharide. So in addition to the linear polysaccharide chain, you also have a fructosyl group that branches out of the polysaccharide. And the second problem, of course, is that it's an unsulfated polysaccharide. Now, we published the genome sequence of this microbial species back in 2013, and we identified the gene clusters that are responsible for the biosynthesis of this polysaccharide. And so this is basically what this E. coli K4 looks like under the microscope. And this is basically part of the polysaccharide chain that I tried to describe. So you do have two sugars that basically form a linear polysaccharide that resembles chondroitin. However, you do have this beta fructosyl group that branches out of this polysaccharide chain. And this beta fructosyl group does not exist in animal-derived polysaccharides. So again, we sequenced the genome of this organism. We identified 3 gene clusters that are involved in the biosynthesis of the polysaccharide. Gene cluster 2 is actually the gene cluster that is involved in the biosynthesis of this polysaccharide. The other 2 gene clusters are basically encoding for enzymes that are involved in the transport of the polysaccharide from the cell to the cell wall and the attachment to the different proteins so that they form the peptidoglycan structure on the cell surface. And so out of all the different genes that are involved in the biosynthesis, we actually identified 3 genes, KFOF, KFOC, and KFOA, that are actually able, when you express them in a heterologous system, so a different E. coli strain, for example, can actually produce the linear polysaccharide without this beta fructosyl group that's branching out from the polysaccharide chains. All right, so now the question is how we can actually use this E. coli strain in order to produce sulfated polysaccharide. Now, the first thing that needs to be done is we need to delete the gene that is responsible for attaching the beta fructosyl group from the polysaccharide chain. And this is a gene going back to the genome sequence that is encoded by KFOE. So it took us a while because E. coli K4 strain is not like a regular commonly used lab E. coli strains. It's actually quite difficult to transform and carry out genetic modifications. So it took us a while, but eventually we deleted KFOE, and that allowed us to produce the polysaccharide chain without the beta fructosyl group. The second thing that needs to happen, and I apologize, there is some noise in the background. The second thing that needs to happen is the expression of sulfotransferases that are actually responsible for sulfation of the polysaccharide. And those are sulfotransferases, chondroitin sulfotransferases that actually derive from animal tissues. So we have actually designed a number of different plasmids that express those sulfotransferases. But of course, cloning those genes is one thing, expressing them functionally in a simple prokaryote such as E. coli is another story that I will talk about. The third component that needs to be present is the biosynthesis of PAPs. So PAPS is basically a small molecule that is produced by all different types of cells, and it actually acts as a sulfur donor. So this is basically the molecule that will provide the sulfur group that will be attached to the polysaccharide chain. In the case of E. coli K4, there is a number of genes that are actually involved in the biosynthesis of PAPS. And there is one particular gene that I highlighted here in red, CISH, that encodes for an enzyme that's called PAPS reductase. So this PAPS reductase is the very first step in the PAPS degradation pathway. So our first hypothesis was that in order to improve the availability of PAPS in E. coli, we should basically remove the PAPS degradation pathway in E. coli. And in order to do that, we basically targeted the downregulation or the deletion of this gene CISH in E. coli. So the first thing that we did was downregulation by using CRISPR-I. So we basically used CRISPR-I TCAS9 in order to downregulate the expression of CISH. And when we did that, and we also expressed the sulfotransferase in this E. coli K4 strain, we were actually able to produce for the very first time a chondroitin polysaccharide that was actually sulfated. It had a sulfation percentage that was a little bit higher than 5%. So basically what that means is that 5% of the polysaccharide was actually sulfated. Now, eventually, we're able to delete CISH. As I told you before, E. coli K4 is not a trivial microbial species to work with, so doing genetics is not as straightforward. So it took us about a couple of years to actually achieve the deletion, and once we did that, we actually were able to produce sulfated chondroitin with a sulfation percentage that was about 19%. And so to summarize what I've shown you so far, we were actually able to develop an E. coli strain by doing a number of genetic modifications, so expression of rat chondroitin sulfotransferases and deletion of two genes, KFOE. So we remove the beta fructosyl group and CISH so that we basically stop the degradation of PAPS. So with those genetic modifications, we're able to produce sulfated chondroitin with a 19% sulfation and a titer of about 120 micrograms per gram of dry cell weight. So all the chondroitin sulfate we're able to produce was actually accumulated inside E. coli. So the question now is, can we actually further improve not only the production titer, so this number here, this 120 micrograms per gram of dry cell weight, but also the sulfation percentage. I have a slide at the very end to show you what the targets are. So in order to basically do that, we decided to basically explore four different things. The first one is the improvement of the sulfotransferase activity. So sulfotransferases are enzymes that barely express functionally in E. coli. So we decided to see how we can improve their functional expression in E. coli. The second target was improving the growth and induction conditions for the recombinant polysaccharide we make out of E. coli. The third target was the export of the polysaccharide, something that I haven't really discussed so far, and how this export mechanism can actually improve both the titer and the sulfation percentage. And finally, how we can further improve the availability of PAPS inside E. coli, something that I will not be talking about today because it's really a very long story. So to start with the very first thing, the functional expression of the sulfotransferases. So those sulfotransferases all exist in mammalian cells, such as human and rats and sharks. They are Golgi enzymes. So that basically means that there are enzymes that undergo glycosylation after they have been translated inside the cell. And of course, E. coli, being a very simple prokaryote, cannot carry out those post-translational modifications. Now, this glycosylation is extremely important for their activity. So the question then is how we can actually improve the functional expression of the sulfotransferase, given the fact that we cannot really glycosylate them in E. coli. So in the previous work, the functional expression was basically achieved by truncating the transmembrane region of the sulfotransferases. We basically remove about 60 amino acids from the N-terminus, and those are basically amino acids that allow the enzyme to attach to the Golgi apparatus. And this is basically how we achieve the production of chondroitin sulfate in the previous data. Now, in order to further improve the functional expression of the enzyme, we used a computational algorithm that has been developed by a group in the Weizmann Institute in Israel that's called PROS. And basically, what PROS allows you to do is it allows you to identify amino acids within a protein that you can actually mutate in order to achieve two things: improve the solubility of the recombinant enzyme inside the host cell, and also improve its stability inside the cell. So the inputs to this algorithm are two things. The first one is the primary amino acid sequence of the enzyme. The very second thing is the structure of the enzyme. So unfortunately, chondroitin sulfotransferases, we don't have a crystal structure for those enzymes. So we basically use a homology-based model in order to derive the crystal structure of one of those chondroitin sulfotransferase, chondroitin sulfotransferase 4O. And this is basically the homology-based structure of the enzyme. And here you basically see some of the amino acids that were identified by PROS as targets for mutation in order to improve both the solubility and the stability of this enzyme in E. coli. And so we generated 3 of those mutants that were predicted by PROS. We call them SM1, SM2, and SM4. And to cut the story short, all those 3 mutants gave us a much better functional expression compared to the wild type sulfotransferase that we were using in the previous work. So we basically have a colorimetric assay that allows to monitor the activity of those enzymes by measuring absorbance at 400 nanometers. So you can basically see all the enzymes gave us a much better activity compared to the wild type enzyme. SM4 was the mutant that actually gave us the best activity using this assay. Now, when we express those mutant sulfotransferases in E. coli, we actually did see a substantial increase in the sulfation percentage compared to what we get by using the wild type sulfotransferase. So in this slide is a little bit misleading, and I apologize for that. So the sulfation percentage here, it looks at around 16%, which is lower than what I was showing you in earlier slides. The problem is that we were using this plasmid PET32LIC, which was a new vector that we had developed at the time in my lab. Now, when we moved to the plasmid that we were using before for the wild type sulfotransferase, which is basically a PTM6 plasmid, which is a much higher copy number plasmid, we were actually able to increase the sulfation percentage to more than 25% compared to the wild type. So I know I'm running out of time, so I'm going to skip this slide. One of the things that we also did was improve the culture conditions. So we basically examined the effect of temperature, the effect of the inducer concentration, and the effect of the induction time at the sulfation percentage of the chondroitin sulfate that we're actually producing in E. coli. We didn't really see a significant effect of those parameters. The last thing that we also tested was the effect of the transport mechanism that E. coli has for transferring this polysaccharide to the cell wall. So one of the things that we actually observed is that when you grow this recombinant E. coli strain, you actually produce 2 different types of chondroitins: an unsulfated chondroitin, which is all secreted in the medium, and the sulfated chondroitin that also stays within E. coli. So we basically developed a hypothesis that there is perhaps a competition between transport of the unsulfated chondroitin to the outside of the cell and the sulfation that basically, and once the sulfation happens, the chondroitin sulfate basically cannot get transported and stays within the cell. So then the question is, can we actually reduce the transport of the chondroitin so that we can increase the availability of chondroitin sulfate? And we did that by using CRISPR-I and Cas9. And to cut the story short, we were in fact able to see that when we downregulated the transport mechanism that E. coli naturally uses, we saw a very substantial increase in the sulfation percentage. We got a sulfation percentage of almost 55%. And just to show you where we need to be in terms of sulfation percentage, this is the sulfation percentage that you find in animal-derived chondroitins. So it varies between 69 and 83%. So the biggest producer of chondroitin sulfate is a company located in Tokyo, Japan. It's called Seika Gaku. It's by far the highest producer of chondroitin sulfate. They provide a sulfation, chondroitin sulfate with a sulfation percentage of about 83%. Some of the other commercially available chondroitin sulfates also derive from animal tissues such as whales and cows, vary between 73 and 69%. So currently we are between 54 and 57% sulfation percentage using the recombinant E. coli that we have developed in our lab. And of course, we're basically exploring different other metabolic engineering methods, such as increasing availability of PAPs in order to basically get to this sulfation percentage where we need to be to have a product that resembles exactly what you get out of animals. Many people working on this project. I don't have time to acknowledge all of them. I would just like to mention my collaborator, Professor Bob Linhart at RPI, who is an analytical chemist, and he's helping us tremendously with the mass spec and NMR characterization of those polysaccharides and funding from many different sources in the US, National Science Foundation, National Institutes of Health, and pharmaceutical companies such as Aspen Pharma and Conagen that have actually provided us with a lot of funding for this work. So thank you for your attention, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Yes, questions, comments, please. Okay, well, please, again, as I said, please drop a question into the chat and we can forward them on to the different speakers. I want to ask as a wrap up, any last questions or comments, but I want to ask the panelists to for their perspective on the visiting professorship program generally. What are some issues? I'm intrigued by, of course, trying to do this during the age of COVID, and so I'm just offering an opportunity for general comments to the three of you about the visiting program, the visiting professor program. Yes, please do go forward.
Actually, it is not really the program has been working yet, I think. So, but I'm very expecting that I'm coming to Thailand and to go on a collaboration with students in Kasetsart University, because I know that many of the Kasetsart University students are very diligent and they're eager to study about our issues. In particular, our issues is closely related to global environmental issues, such as global warming or the biodiversity. So it is really let's say interest of the worldwide people have an interest to do study, and it is very so focused on the very impressive researches we can do.
That's why, in fact, I was wondering about that. Is it possible to do independent research and then it overlaps later? In other words, are people progressing on the same project, but they're progressing sort of asynchronously, not in sync with each other?
Right, but yeah, I know that what we have done is quite interesting, and then maybe some kind of the progress we can expect. But the other issues that are coming every year, so maybe right.
Yeah, I know.
The students in the Kasetsart University can propose very new issues, and I really expect that the new issues it will be very interesting.
Okay. Well, again, thank you so very much. Are there any last general comments? I'm about to wrap up the entire program, so I just want to throw open the entire floor to any questions, any comments before we move to our forum closing. I'm aware of the time, and so I'm suggesting that we move to the forum closing unless there are last comments or last questions, which you're welcome to give last questions or last comments. If not, then we'll move to our final forum closing. and then I'll say goodbye after that. Our forum closing will be given by Dr. Kampanat Pensupa.
Chancellor, Vice Chancellor, President, Rector from Participant University, and all participants of this online forum. Good evening to all from Bangkok. It is my pleasure to provide closing remarks from KU Online Academic Forum. In celebration of the 29th anniversary of Kasetsart University, under the theme Reinventing Kasetsart University, Innovative Research and Advanced Study in Agriculture and Food, the forum has achieved its objectives to provide the platform for the thoughtful discussion and the active exchange of ideas. Kasetsart University mission is to translate this insight idea into practical, effective action plans. Hence, we have showcased our ongoing effort and some of the outstanding output we have achieved from Kasetsart University Innovative Research and Advanced Study Program, done in cooperation with other partners in the other institutions, such as the Outbound Exchange for Advanced Research Program and the Visiting Professor Program that we established. I firmly believe that primary role of university is to provide the leadership and to find strong partners for collaborations and innovation so that we can together develop effective strategies to prepare our students so they can confront the critical global challenges in the way that best serve our communities. On behalf of Kasetsart University, I would like to again express my sincere thanks to the parties who have contributed to the successful online academic forum. I especially wish to recognize and thank you for speakers from the Netherlands, Japan, Singapore, Germany, and the United States. We benefit greatly from our alliance with the embassy partner throughout the world. Finally, I would like to extend my sincere wishes to all of you for safety and security as we continue to find solutions that will solve the pandemic. It is my strong gauge with that we can use these experiences to create the strategy for the vibrant future. Thank you very much for your kind participation. ขอบคุณครับ
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Kampanat. Thank you much. I want to thank the entire group, all of you for participating. We had more than 100 people for most parts of the program. Appreciate the speakers very, very much. Amazing program. The diversity, the topics were very, very impressive. Last bit of housekeeping. The staff has put into the chat a link for an evaluation. And so we're asking you to please give an evaluation of the forum. And here is another one. It's so you can click on this, take a photo or click on there. And also one more bit of housekeeping. We will try to capture the program, the recordings of the program. We need to check with the speakers first and don't do things without permission. And try to make it available on YouTube, and then we'll send out the YouTube citation, or you can always just Google or do a search online of the forum, the 79KU online academic forum, and look for the YouTube video in that fashion. I think that's it. So I'm going to sign off now and say thank you on behalf of Kasetsart University for your very kind and patient paying attention and staying with us for this 2-day program. Thank you so very much, and have a good rest of the day.